Hello, I'm Philip Chase. Welcome to my YouTube channel on the best of fantasy. Late summer. It's one of my favorite times of year. The English professor in me feels so much potential in the air. But today's video is not about looking ahead, it's about looking back. This is my very first wrap-up video, my summer wrap-up video. And I began the summer with Steven Erikson's Forge of Darkness. This is actually one of my top 2 reads of the summer, I would say. I enjoyed this immensely, and one of the main reasons why this was an important read for me is that I feel like I made a kind of breakthrough in terms of understanding Steven Erikson's writing. Now, I made a video, of course, a review on Forge of Darkness. Also made a while back a review of the entire the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. And I said something in that video that I still actually agree with, although I think I couched it more in terms of a criticism. And that was that the Malazan Book of the Fallen is not a character-centered or character-driven narrative. And I actually stand by that still. But now I see that actually as an asset. And it's because of reading Forge of Darkness that I feel like I understand what Erikson is kind of up to. And he kind of explains his approach in Forge of Darkness. He has the narrator explain it as, the fact that there are no individual stories. And this is just the thing you see play out in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Not a character-driven narrative. It's a theme-driven narrative, with the theme being really the overarching theme is compassion in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and it's brilliantly set forth, and really the way Erikson wrote it is the only way it could have been written. So, and of course I enjoyed Forge of Darkness immensely for its own sake, although I will say it is a story that took me at least a few hundred pages to really get into. Luckily there's a lot of pages, so that's quite all right. But by the end of the book, boy, I sure was sold on the Kharkanas trilogy. I'm really looking forward to what happens here with the Teist, Andy, and everything else in the next book, Fall of Light, which actually I'm going to be picking that one up really soon. So on to my next book that I read this summer, Stephen King's The Gunslinger. This is another one. Actually, I picked this one up really in response to many people advocating for it, and I decided to give it a go. I'd never read anything by Stephen King before, so The Gunslinger was my very first Stephen King novel, and I do not regret it whatsoever. This is a series, the Dark Tower series, that I am most definitely going to continue with. I was actually surprised by The Gunslinger because a lot of people say it is a weakness in the series, and for me, actually, it was fascinating. I love the blending of genres that goes on in there and the weirdness of the whole thing. So yeah, that was a real highlight for me as well. The Gunslinger, big thumbs up for that one, and I'm definitely continuing with that series. Next, I took on Prince of Fools, and this is by an author that I was pretty sure I was going to enjoy Prince of Fools because I absolutely loved Mark Lawrence's The Broken Empire trilogy. It's right up there among my top 10, and I was not disappointed at all by Prince of Fools, which is the first book in the Red Queen's War trilogy. So really, this was an engaging read with some really vivid, great character work. I loved the 2 main characters in here, and this was just a fantastic read, cementing my very, very high opinion of Mark Lawrence's writing. The guy's, I don't know if he could set a foot wrong here in my opinion, but so I'm really looking forward to continuing with the Red Queen's War trilogy in the very near future. Next, I took on something brand new to me, and that is The Last Wish, which is actually the first of the short story collections. There are 2 of these short story collections among all the Witcher books. And again, this is one that I took up in response to a lot of the viewers who were telling me, you really should read the short story collection first before you take on the novels. And I'm very glad I did. And I'm also very excited to continue with the Witcher books. I had a really fun time. I think the thing that I loved the most about The Last Wish and the various stories contained therein is the sense of humor. It really had me laughing. It took me a little while to latch onto it, but once I did, really enjoyed this book. I also love what Sapkowski does with fairy tales in here. He's got some interesting parodies in there, and just a really witty, smart, and interesting read. I'm definitely going to continue with the Witcher books, taking up the next short story collection. Actually, will be the next one I read. And then there was The Poppy War. This is R.F. Kuang's first installment in a trilogy. And this was another one that impressed me very much. This is a debut novel, which is really quite amazing. And I had a very high opinion of this. I did have a couple criticisms of the book, in that it seemed to me that there were two parts that were kind of stitched together and not very smoothly. And I know some people might say that the second part, the war part, begins so abruptly in order to give the reader the sensation of what it's like to be around when war erupts. But, I just didn't feel like it was a deliberate strategy on the author's part. I think it was just not done well. And a couple of things, the minor characters in there were not particularly well developed, but the main character, Rin, fantastic. And I want to continue reading this series, or this trilogy, just for that, just for the main character. I really thought that was done beautifully. I also loved the setting. I thought that this was a very interesting book. I had not read much fantasy. I know there's a lot out there, and I need to read some more of it. But I had not read much fantasy with an Asian flavor to it, or an Asian setting, or Asian-inspired setting, I should say. So really enjoyed that a lot, and I'm looking forward to continuing with this trilogy. Next, I took on a series I've been hearing a lot about for a while, and this is an urban fantasy series. The first book, Stormfront in the Dresden Files, Jim Butcher's perhaps his best-known series, although he's written some other kind of high fantasy stuff I know. But for me, this was the first I had read of Jim Butcher, and I had a blast, frankly, reading this book. Had a great time. I loved getting to know Harry Dresden and the whimsicalness of this world, where it's basically our world, but it's got some magic in it. And I enjoyed getting to know Harry as a character, and I'm really looking forward. I hear that this series is one that gets better and better, especially after book 2, but I'm going to read book 2 next and see what I make of that. That's Full Moon. I've got that ready. And then I get to my very favorite read of the summer. This is my top read of the summer. Joe Abercrombie's A Little Hatred. This is the first book in his new trilogy, the Age of Madness trilogy. It is set in the same world, though, as the First Law trilogy and the various standalones that he's written, and the short stories, Sharp Ends. I just love Abercrombie. I think he's got so much going for him as a writer, and he's got these wonderful action sequences in his books that I just love, with his perspective shifts. He does characters about as well as anybody out there, in my opinion. Just brilliantly realized, and the humor is fantastic. I'm actually laughing out loud while I'm reading Joe Abercrombie's books, and this book did not disappoint at all. I came into it with pretty high expectations, being a fan already of Joe Abercrombie, but this book, for me, he hit it out of the ballpark, actually. I feel like Joe Abercrombie is getting better and better and better as a writer. I loved the First Law trilogy. I thought the standalones were even better. And this is a brilliant beginning to the new trilogy. So I'm very excited to be looking at very soon The Trouble with Peace. It's coming out in a couple weeks, actually. So I'm really pumped up for that. And then I read A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This was a book I had heard about here and there, and I wanted to check it out. I had heard that some people call it adult fantasy, some call it YA. And in my opinion, it really probably would be best served to be described as YA. And I enjoyed this book. I thought that the two main characters were pretty well realized. And I thought the whole concept of the various Londons was really cool and fun. And so there were definitely aspects of this book that I really did admire. But on the whole, I would say that it's not a book that has me convinced that I want to read the rest of the series. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to continue with the Shades of Magic series. And it's for a few reasons. One, the book, in my opinion, lacks some complexity, and the secondary characters are all extremely flat. And I just didn't really find myself going wow over this. And really, my quest here is to find the best fantasy of all time. And there's just so much out there. So for now, at least, I'm going to not continue. I might pick it up again someday, though. And finally, I'm cheating here a little bit because I haven't actually finished this great big fat book, The Elven by Bernhard Hennen. This is originally a German book, and it's been translated. I'm cheating again. I'm using the translation. But the main reason I'm cheating today is I'm only a little over halfway done with this book. And so I haven't actually finished it. It's not quite a wrap-up here in that sense. But I will be finishing it fairly soon, and I hope to release my review of The Elven perhaps midweek next week. So I'm very much looking forward to finishing this book. It's been a really fun start, and there's some great characters in here that have made me laugh at times, and there's just a really, I'll be talking about it more midweek. I don't want to say too much right now because I'm actually not done with the book yet, but so far so good. I'm enjoying The Elven. It's been a fun ride so far, and that's my summer wrap up. That's all the fantasy that I read this summer, and I would say that it's been a great summer. I've enjoyed myself immensely and had a great time reviewing these books, with the exception of The Elven, which I'll be reviewing very soon. And I hope you'll join me for that review. And in a week, I'm going to be recording my fall TBR so that you'll know what I'm up to in the fall. And I hope you'll join me for that as well. Until next time.